I didn't think much of the Mascot rules when I first saw them. That was probably my first mistake. I had seen plenty of strange workplace rules before. Every job has them. Don't leave the freezer door open. Don't accept bills over 50 after dark. Don't clean the fryers alone. Don't let customers use the employee bathroom. Don't sign for deliveries without checking the count. Rules are usually just proof that somebody, somewhere, once did something stupid. That is what I told myself when I started working nights at Briar Glen Family Park. Briar Glen was not a big amusement park. It was not the kind of place people flew across the country to visit. It did not have huge roller coasters or costume princesses or fireworks over a castle. It sat off Route 19, about 8 miles past the last gas station and about 2 miles before the road turned into national forest. The trees came right up to the back fences. In the summer, you could smell pine sap and old rainwater over the popcorn grease. In the winter, the park looked like it had been left behind on purpose. There was a small wooden sign at the entrance with faded red letters. Briar Glen Family Park. Smiles since 1978. Someone had painted over the word family at some point, but the paint had peeled, so it showed through again if your headlights hit it right. The park had closed to the public 3 years before I started there. The official reason was structural damage after a bad storm and a lawsuit involving a broken ride restraint. The unofficial reason, according to almost everyone in town, was that the owners were out of money before the storm ever came. I heard other stories too, but people around there liked to make old places sound haunted. It was something to do when there was nothing else to talk about. I didn't take the job because I was brave. I took it because I was 29, behind on rent, and tired of applying for warehouse jobs that paid $9 less than they promised in the ad. I had worked loading docks, gas stations, one motel desk, and half a summer at a chicken plant before I quit after a guy lost 2 fingers. Night work never bothered me much. I had always been quiet. I didn't mind being alone if there was a routine. I liked clocks, checklists, locked doors, and knowing exactly what I was supposed to do. That was the kind of person I was before Briar Glen. My Uncle Ray got me the job. He wasn't really my uncle by blood. He had been my dad's best friend when they were young, and after my dad died, Ray stayed around in that uneven way some people do. He showed up at Christmas with a gift card. He helped my mom change a water heater once. He came to my high school graduation and stood in the back because he didn't like crowds. Ray had worked maintenance at Briar Glen for years before it shut down. After the closure, he stayed on as one of 3 caretakers. Mostly they kept vandals out, checked for water damage, watched the fence, and made sure nobody stole copper from the old concession buildings. When he called me, he sounded tired. "I heard you're looking," he said. "I'm always looking. Night security. Nothing fancy. You sit in a booth, make rounds, write down anything weird. Define weird." He went quiet for half a second. "Broken locks. Fence cuts. Kids. Animals. Storm damage. That kind of weird." The pay was not good, but it was steady. 4 nights a week, sometimes 5. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. No benefits, but cash bonuses for covering extra shifts. There was a heater in the security office, a microwave, a bathroom that mostly worked, and an old camera system that still covered most of the park. I asked why they needed someone new. Ray said, "Marty's leaving." "Who's Marty?" "Old night guy." "What happened?" "He's leaving." That was all he said. I should have asked more, but I needed the money. The first night, Ray met me in the parking lot at 9:30. It was late October, cold enough to make the air feel sharp. The lot was cracked and full of weeds. The ticket booths stood in a row near the entrance, their glass cloudy and their little sliding windows shut. Beyond the gates, the park sat dark and still. A few bulbs burned along the main walkway, not enough to make the place feel open, just enough to show you what was closed. The rides rose in black shapes behind the buildings. The Ferris wheel stood with half its gondolas removed. The carousel was covered with a blue tarp that snapped when the wind came through. The kiddie coaster, called the Briar Beast, curved between fake rock walls that had gone gray with mildew. Somewhere deeper in the park, a loose sign knocked softly against wood. Ray handed me a ring of keys heavy enough to pull my arm down. "Don't lose those," he said. I figured. "I'm serious. I'm serious too." He stared at me in that way older men do when they are trying to decide whether to explain something or let you learn the bad way. Then he turned and walked me through the gate. The security office was just inside the park, attached to the old guest services building. It had cinderblock walls painted beige, 2 desks, a breaker panel, lockers, a radio charger, a coffee maker, and a wall of monitors showing grainy black and white camera feeds. The cameras covered the front gate, the midway, the carousel plaza, the arcade entrance, the service road, the Mascot wardrobe building, and the employee courtyard behind the food stands. Some cameras were dead. Some had snow across them. Camera 6 showed the main Mascot gate, where costumed characters used to come out during the day. It was a short tunnel between the wardrobe building and the old stage. Ray pointed to each monitor. Front gate. Lot. Guest services. Carousel. Midway. Mascot gate. Arcade. Service road. Back fence. Employee hall. Wardrobe exterior. Lost and found. Lost and found has its own camera? He didn't smile. People used to steal from it. I looked at the feed. It showed a small room with shelves full of plastic bins. Umbrellas, hats, old bags, water bottles, toy swords, strollers, all layered in dust. Who's stealing lost and found from a closed park? People steal anything. That part was true. Ray showed me the logbook. Every hour, I had to write the time, weather, temperature in the office, and anything unusual. At midnight and 4, I had to do a walking round from guest services down the midway, past the carousel, around the arcade, through the employee courtyard, and back. If weather was bad, I could skip the back fence and note it. He showed me the radio. Channel 1 is us. Channel 2 is park maintenance, but nobody should be on it after 7. Channel 3 used to be ride ops. Don't use Channel 3. Why? No reason to. He showed me the breaker box. These are labeled wrong, he said. Don't trust the labels. If something goes out, call me before you flip anything. He showed me the small kitchen. If you make coffee, dump it before you leave. Mice get into everything. Then he showed me the Mascot wardrobe building. We did not go inside at first. It stood behind the small amphitheater stage, where they used to do birthday shows and character meet and greets. The building had green metal siding, 1 back door, 1 front door, and no windows except a little square one in the top of the front door. A painted sign above the door said, Mascot Room. Authorized cast only. The paint was peeling, but the smiling raccoon face beside the words was still clear. His name was Mary Mac. That was what Ray told me. Mary Mac the raccoon had been the park mascot from the 80s until the closure. There were others too. Dolly Deer, Benny Beaver, the Pinecone Pals, a fox named Jasper Jack. But Mac was the one on the signs, cups, maps, shirts, and benches. If you grew up within 50 miles of Briar Glen, you probably had at least one photo with that raccoon. I did. Somewhere at my mom's house, There was a picture of me at 7 years old standing next to Mary Mac with my hand buried in his fake fur. I remembered the costume being taller than I expected. I also remembered not liking the eyes. That night, Ray unlocked the mascot room. A smell came out before the door opened all the way. Old fabric. Rubber. Dust. Something sweet underneath, like spilled soda that had dried years ago and never really stopped being sticky. He reached in and flicked on the light. Rows of costume pieces hung on metal racks. Big padded bodies and plastic covers. Feet the size of buckets. Gloves with 4 fingers. Heads on shelves along the far wall, all facing inward like they had been put there in a hurry. Mary Mac's head was in the middle. Even in the weak fluorescent light, it looked too awake. Gray fur, white muzzle, black mask around the eyes, huge fixed grin. One ear bent slightly forward. The eyes were glossy black. Ray did not step inside. "Don't go in there unless you have to," he said. "For what?" "Leaks. Break-ins. Animals. Animals get in there? Animals get everywhere." He closed the door and locked it. Back in the office, he gave me the last thing. It was a folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges, tucked inside the front cover of the logbook. "I know this looks dumb," he said. That got my attention more than the paper did. Ray did not embarrass easily. If he thought something looked dumb, that meant he had already had the argument with himself and lost. "What is it?" "Rules. For security? 4 nights." I unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, blocky, and done in black marker. At the top, someone had written, "Mascot rules, night shift. Do not ignore. Do not edit." Below that were 7 rules. 1. All mascot heads must face the wall before midnight. Do not count them after midnight. 2. If a mascot appears on any camera, write down the camera number and time. Do not rewind the footage to check. 3. If you hear children laughing after closing, turn the carousel music on for 1 minute, then off for 2. Repeat until the laughing stops. Do not go outside. 4. If Mary Mac waves from the mascot gate camera, wave back once with your left hand and look away. Do not wave twice. 5. Do not answer the radio if the caller uses your full name. 6. If the office clock stops at 2:17 a.m., lock the door, turn off the lights, and do not move until the park music stops. 7. If you find a guest wristband with your name on it, place it in Lost and Found before sunrise. Do not wear it. I read them twice. Then I looked at Ray. "You're kidding." "I'm not. Is this a hazing thing?" "No. Marty wrote this." Ray rubbed the side of his face. "Marty added to it. Some of it was here before him." "You actually follow these?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because it's easier." That was all he said. I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because that was the reaction my body picked before my brain had caught up. Ray didn't laugh with me. He took the paper from my hand and put it back in the logbook. "Most nights nothing happens," he said. "You make rounds. You drink bad coffee. You watch raccoons fight over trash that isn't there anymore. Then you go home. But if something does happen, don't try to be clever. Don't test it. Don't prove anything. Just follow the rules. What happens if I don't?" He looked at the wall of monitors. "Marty didn't at first." "What happened to Marty?" "He's leaving," Ray said again. The office heater clicked on. Warm air blew from the vent with a dusty smell. I remember wanting to push him. I wanted him to admit it was a joke, or tell me some story I could laugh about later. I wanted him to say the rules were about trespassers and costumes, or insurance. or old employees coming around drunk. Instead, he showed me where the bathroom plunger was. At 9:58, he put on his coat. "You've got my number," he said. "Call if you need to. But don't call me from the office phone after 2. "Why not?" He looked irritated then, but not at me. "Just use your cell." Then he left. I watched him walk through the front gate, lock it behind him, and cross the empty parking lot to his truck. The headlights came on. He sat there longer than he needed to, engine running. Then he drove away. That was my first night at Briar Glen. For the first 2 hours, nothing happened. That should have made me feel stupid for being nervous, and mostly it did. I made coffee. I checked the camera feeds. I read through old logbook entries. Most were boring. 10 p.m. clear. Office 68. No issues. 11 p.m. wind picking up. Trash can tip near Dippin' Dogs. 12 a.m. round complete. Gate secure. Some entries were stranger, but not in a way that meant anything by themselves. 1:13 a.m. camera 6 interference. Logged. 2:17 a.m. clock issue. Followed procedure. 3:02 a.m. laughter near carousel. Music played. Stopped 3:11. 4:44 a.m. wristband found by ticket booth. Placed LNF. They were written in different handwriting. Ray's was slanted and cramped. Marty's was large and shaky. Someone named Elise had neat cursive. The older entries were faded. No one explained anything. That bothered me. Rules without explanations make you feel like a child. They ask for obedience without giving you the comfort of cause and effect. I told myself it was just an old staff superstition. The kind that gets passed down until everyone follows it because no one wants to be the first to stop. At 11:47, I remembered Rule 1. All mascot heads must face the wall before midnight. I had not checked them. For a few minutes, I argued with myself. I didn't want to go back into that building. I also didn't want to start my first shift by ignoring the one rule I could easily verify. So I took the keys, flashlight, and radio, and left the office. The park was colder than it looked through the glass. The main walkway stretched ahead of me, lined with closed game booths. Balloon darts. Ring toss. Milk bottles. The prizes were gone, but their outlines remained on pegboard walls. The bulbs around the signs were dark, except for a few that flickered weakly under the awnings. My footsteps sounded too loud. That was the first thing you notice in a closed amusement park. Everything was built for noise. Music, crowds, kids shouting, ride motors, game bells, soda machines, people calling over each other. Without that, the place felt wrong. Not just empty. Waiting. I unlocked the mascot room. The smell was worse in the cold. I stepped inside and shined my flashlight over the shelves. The heads were not all facing the wall. Mary Mac was facing the room. So was Dolly Dear. So was Jasper Jack. Their smiles looked bright in the beam. Their empty neck holes opened beneath them. I stood there for longer than I should have. Then I put my flashlight under my arm and turned them one by one. Mary Mac's head was heavier than it looked. The fur felt damp, though the room was dry. When I turned it, something inside shifted softly, like fabric settling. I turned the rest. Then I made the mistake of counting. Not out loud. Just with my eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That was before midnight, so I told myself it didn't matter. 8 mascot heads. Mary Mac. Dolly Dear. Benny Beaver. Jasper Jack. 2 pinecone pals. A raccoon backup head with older fur. 1 blank white rehearsal head with mesh eyes and no features. 8. I locked the door and went back to the office. At midnight I wrote. 12 a.m. Mascot heads checked before midnight. All facing wall. Round pending. I did my walk. Nothing happened. The first incident came at 12:38. I was eating a vending machine honey bun Ray had left in the drawer and watching the cameras without really watching them. The monitor light made the office feel smaller than it was. A receipt printer under the desk clicked. It made me jump, which annoyed me. I had not even noticed the printer before then. It was an old thermal receipt printer attached to the park's dead ticketing computer. Ray hadn't mentioned it because there was no reason to. The computer beside it wasn't even on. The printer clicked again. Then it printed a short strip of paper. I stared at it. After a few seconds, I reached down and tore it off. The paper was warm. It said, "One child admission. Mary Mac meet and greet. 12:39 a.m. Guest, Daniel Carter." My name is Daniel Carter. I told myself it was just a glitch. That is the honest truth. I did not think ghost or monster or whatever word you would use now. I thought old system. Bad wiring. Stored print job. Some test from years ago with my name entered by Ray as a joke. That would have made sense, except I had never told Ray my middle or last name that night, because he already knew it. That would have made sense, except the old ticket computer was off. I folded the ticket and put it in the logbook. For a while, I did nothing. I listened to the heater. I watched the camera feeds. I looked at the clock every few minutes. At 1 o'clock I wrote. 1 a.m. ticket printer activated. Possible stored job/system fault. See attached. I did not mention the name. I didn't call Ray. I did not want to be the guy who called his uncle on the first night because a printer scared him. At 1:23, camera 6 flickered. Camera 6 showed the Mascot gate. Most of the feed was dark. The camera pointed at the short tunnel beside the wardrobe building. There was a painted mural on the wall there, though you could barely see it in black and white. Mary Mac holding a balloon. Dolly Deer waving. The words "come back soon" above them. When the feed steadied, someone was standing in the tunnel. At first, I thought it was a person. Then I saw the head. A mascot stood in the Mascot gate, facing the camera. Mary Mac. The fur looked pale gray on the monitor. The grin was the same. The bent ear tilted forward. I sat very still. The rules came back to me one at a time. If a mascot appears on any camera, write down the camera number and time. Do not rewind the footage to check. I looked at the clock. 1:24. I opened the logbook with hands that felt clumsy and wrote. 1:24 a.m. camera 6. Mascot visible. Then I looked back. The mascot was gone. The tunnel was empty. I almost rewound the footage. I need to be clear about that. My hand went to the mouse. The camera system had a playback bar at the bottom. It would have taken 2 clicks. 1 click maybe. I wanted proof. Not for anyone else. For me. I wanted to see if the thing had walked in or if it had just appeared between frames. I wanted to see if a person had come from the wardrobe door. I wanted to see if there was a zipper, a shadow, a prank. My hand was on the mouse when the radio on the desk crackled. Static. Then a voice said, "Don't." It was Ray's voice. I yanked my hand back. The radio hissed. "Ray?" No answer. I picked it up. The little display said Channel 1. "Ray, is that you?" Static. Then a faint click. I stood up so fast the chair rolled into the wall. For the next 10 minutes, I checked every camera. Front gate. Empty. Parking lot. Empty. Midway. Empty. Carousel. Covered. Wardrobe exterior. Door closed. Lost and found. Still shelves and bins. I told myself somebody was messing with me. That was the most comforting explanation, so I held on to it. At 1:39, I called Ray from my cell. He answered on the 6th ring. Yeah? His voice was thick with sleep. Did you just radio me? No. Are you sure? Danny, I'm at home. I hated how he said that. Not annoyed. Not surprised. Just tired. Something was on camera 6. Silence. What time? About 1:24. You write it down? Yes. You rewind? No. Good. I waited. He sighed. Stay in the office until your 2 o'clock round. You said to do rounds at midnight and 4. I'm saying stay in the office until 2. Is someone in the park? No. How do you know? Because if someone was in the park, that would be easier. I heard a woman's voice in the background, Ray's wife maybe, asking what was wrong. Ray lowered his voice. Listen to me. Do not go looking for the costume. Do not open the wardrobe door again tonight. If you hear kids, use the carousel switch. If the clock stops, follow the rule. If anything says your full name, don't answer. It already printed my name. That's not the same. What does that mean? It means don't answer. He hung up before I could ask anything else. I stood there with the phone against my ear, looking at the monitors. That was the moment the job stopped being strange and started being real. Not because of the mascot. Not because of the ticket. Because Ray was scared, and he was not a man who acted scared unless he had already decided fear was useful. At 2 o'clock, nothing had changed. I did not do a round. Ray had said to stay in the office until 2, and by the time 2 came, I had no desire to leave. I drank cold coffee. I watched the clock. 2:10. 2:12. 2:15. I remember telling myself the rule was too specific to happen. That is another thing people do. We treat specific danger like it is less likely because it sounds made up. If the rule had said, if the clock stops, hide, I might have believed it more. But 2:17 felt like a story detail. Then the second hand reached 12. The clock read 2:17. And stopped. Not slowed. Not ticked weakly. Stopped. The heater shut off at the same time. The office became quiet in a way I had not heard yet. No hum from the vent. No buzz from the fluorescent light. No electrical noise from the monitors. Even the little refrigerator in the corner stopped vibrating. The camera screens were still on, but the images froze. Mary Mac stood on camera 6 again. Only now he was closer to the camera. I could see one glove raised. He was waving. Rule 4. If Mary Mac waves from the Mascot gate camera, wave back once with your left hand and look away. Do not wave twice. But Rule 6 said if the clock stops at 2:17, lock the door, turn off the lights, and do not move until the park music stops. The problem was that the office door was not locked. I had locked the outside door, but not the inner latch. It was a little push-button lock in the knob. I could reach it in 3 steps. Do not move. Lock the door. Do not move. For a few seconds I just stood there with both rules fighting in my head. Then something tapped on the office window. Not the exterior window facing the park. The little interior window in the door. Tap. 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 3 careful knocks. I looked at the door before I could stop myself. The hall outside was dark. A shape stood beyond the glass. It was too close to see all of it. Gray fur pressed against the small window. One glossy eye filled the square, catching the monitor light. The doorknob turned once. Slowly. I moved. I crossed the office in 3 steps and slapped the lock button down. The knob stopped. I turned off the light. The office went black except for the frozen monitor glow. The mascot on camera 6 still had its hand raised. I remembered Rule 4 then. I raised my left hand and waved once. It felt stupid. More than stupid. It felt humiliating. Like I had agreed to take part in something that had been waiting for me to understand the steps. Then I looked away. For a long time, nothing happened. I stood with my back to the door. My hand was still raised. I lowered it slowly. The hallway smelled like wet fabric. The glass in the office door fogged from the other side. Something dragged lightly along the door. Not scratched. Dragged. Like a soft glove moving down the wood. Then the park music started. I had not heard it before that night. It came from the speakers outside, thin and warped by distance. A cheerful instrumental tune, the kind that used to play near the carousel. Bells and flutes and a bouncing little drumbeat. It played too slowly. Like the tape was tired. The music moved through the empty park and into the office walls. I stood in the dark and listened. At some point, the doorknob turned back. At some point, the shape moved away from the window. The music kept playing. I don't know how long. The clock still said 2:17. My phone screen would not turn on. The monitor stayed frozen. I thought about sitting down, but Rule 6 said do not move. I had already moved once. I was not going to risk moving again. So I stood there until my legs ached and my throat dried out. The music ended in the middle of a note. The heater clicked on. The monitors flickered and refreshed. The clock started ticking again. 2:18. The hallway was empty. I turned on the light. There was no mascot outside the door. There was no wet fabric smell. On camera 6, the mascot gate was empty. But there was something on the floor outside the office door. I saw it on the hallway camera before I opened the door. A guest wristband. A strip of faded yellow paper. I already knew what it would say. I opened the door anyway. The wristband lay curled near the threshold, like someone had slipped it under the door and then changed their mind. Printed on it in black ink. Daniel Carter. Mary Mac meet and greet. Valid today. Rule 7. If you find a guest wristband with your name on it, place it in lost and found before sunrise. Do not wear it. I almost didn't pick it up. I didn't want to touch it. But the rule said if you find it, place it in lost and found before sunrise. I used 2 fingers and carried it at arm's length. The lost and found room was attached to guest services, maybe 30 feet from the office. It was the only place I could go without stepping outside. I unlocked it, dropped the wristband into a plastic bin full of sunglasses, and locked it again. When I came back, the receipt printer clicked. It printed one line. Thank you, Daniel. I did not write that in the logbook. I should have. Instead, I tore the paper into pieces and put it in my pocket. At 6 in the morning, Ray came through the front gate with a paper cup of coffee in each hand. I was sitting at the desk, staring at the monitors. He looked at me. Then he looked at the logbook. He read the entries slowly. You okay? He asked. No. He nodded like that was the right answer. I told him about the printer, the camera, the clock, the door, the wristband. I showed him the torn receipt pieces from my pocket. He did not touch them. You put the band in lost and found? Yes. Before sunrise? Yes. You didn't wear it? I stared at him. Why would I wear it? Good. That was Ray. He could make a simple answer feel worse than a warning. I asked him what Mary Mac was. He said, "It's a mascot. Don't do that." He looked tired in the morning light. Older than I remembered. His eyes were red. "I don't know what it is," he said. "None of us do." "How long has this been happening?" "Longer than I worked here." "And people still worked here?" "People need jobs." I laughed then, but there was nothing funny in it. Ray sat in the other chair. "When the park was open, most of it happened at night. Things moved. Costumes out of place. Music. Voices. The old-timers treated it like a maintenance issue. Like pipes freezing or raccoons in the trash. Follow the rules and you'd be fine. And if you didn't? He looked toward the lost and found camera. Sometimes nothing. Sometimes somebody quit. Sometimes somebody got confused. Confused how? They'd come in saying they remembered things that didn't happen. Shifts they never worked. Birthday shows they never performed. Kids they never met. One guy was found asleep inside the parade float wearing a costume body with no head. Jesus. He was alive. That doesn't make it better. No, Ray said. It doesn't. I asked about Marty. Ray took a long drink of coffee. Marty answered the radio. Full name? Yeah. What happened? Nothing at first. He finished his shift. Went home. Came back the next night acting normal. And? He kept hearing his own voice on the park speakers. Then he started writing log entries he didn't remember writing. Then he started forgetting which side of the gate he was supposed to be on. I didn't understand that then. I do now. Ray told me Marty was moving to his daughter's house in Ohio. He said the park owners were giving him severance even though he had only been part-time. He said I could still quit. He said that like he expected me to. I almost did. I sat in my car after that first shift with the engine running and watched the closed park through the windshield. Morning made it look cheap again. Peeling paint. Dead leaves. Rusted chain. Old banners sagging from lampposts. Nothing supernatural can survive daylight in your head for long. That is one of the cruelest parts. By noon, after 4 hours of bad sleep, I had almost convinced myself I had panicked over a prank and a few electrical issues. By 5, I was angry. By 9:30 that night, I was back in the parking lot. I wish I could tell you I returned because I wanted answers. The truth is simpler. Rent was due. Ray was waiting by the gate again. He had a thermos and a face like he hadn't slept either. You sure? He asked. No. That's honest. He walked me in and stayed for 20 minutes. We checked the Mascot room together before midnight. All heads were facing the wall already. I did not count them. Ray noticed. Good, he said. Why can't I count after midnight? He hesitated. Because sometimes the number changes. What if it changes before midnight? Then don't be the one who notices. He left at 10. The second night was quiet for almost 3 hours. I followed the routine more carefully. I wrote in the log every hour. I checked the door locks. I kept the radio volume low but not off. I refused to touch the camera playback controls. At midnight I did the walking round. The park felt different now that I had a reason to be afraid of it. I noticed things I had missed. The trash cans shaped like tree stumps all had little cartoon faces. The faces looked different depending on your angle. Some seemed surprised. Some seemed hungry. Old speaker boxes were hidden in fake birdhouses along the path. The game booths still had mirrors angled toward the walkway, meant to make prizes look bigger. Every surface had eyes if you looked long enough. I passed the carousel. The tarp moved gently in the wind. Under it, I could see the frozen shapes of horses. Poles. Raised heads. Open mouths. The control booth beside it had a rusted padlock and a switch panel inside. Ray had shown me the music switch in the office. The carousel itself had no power, just the sound system. I came back through the employee courtyard and stopped near the wardrobe building. The door was shut. The little square window at the top was dark. I did not go near it. At 12:41, while I was entering the round in the logbook, camera 12 showed movement in Lost and Found. That room should have been empty. On the screen, a plastic bin slid halfway off a shelf. It stopped. Then another bin moved. I stood up. The Lost and Found room was just down the hall. The smart thing would have been to ignore it. Or call Ray. Or make a note and deal with it in the morning. Instead, I watched the camera. A third bin moved. The one I had put the wristband in. It tilted slowly and spilled onto the floor. Umbrellas, sunglasses, old stuffed animals, a child's shoe, 2 sun hats, a cracked phone case, and the yellow wristband. The wristband landed separate from everything else. Then it uncurled. I could read my name even on the grainy camera feed. Daniel Carter. I told myself there could be a mouse in the bin. That would have made sense, except the wristband turned toward the camera. Not slid. Not blue. Turned. Like someone wanted me to see it. I went to the door of the office and stopped. The rule said if I found it, place it in Lost and Found before sunrise. I had already done that. It did not say what to do if it came back out. That was the problem with the rules. They were specific until they weren't. Behind me, the receipt printer clicked. I turned around. A strip of paper came out. Lost item claim. Guest, Daniel Carter. Item, admission wristband. Status, ready for pickup. I left it in the printer. I did not go to Lost and Found. At 1:05, the radio crackled. Danny? It was Ray's voice again. I stared at the radio. Danny, pick up. The display said Channel 1. I reached for it, then stopped. Rule 5 said do not answer if the caller uses your full name. He had only said Danny. Ray? I said. Yeah. You all right? How do I know it's you? A long pause. Then he said, You don't. That was not comforting, but it sounded like Ray. What do you need? I asked. Did Lost and Found move? I looked at camera 12. The items were still on the floor. Yes. Leave it. The wristband came out. Leave it. The printer says ready for pickup. Ray swore softly. Unplug the printer. I looked under the desk. The printer cord ran into a power strip with the old computer, monitor, and a label maker. You sure? Yeah. I reached down and pulled the plug. The printer went dead. The paper strip stayed hanging from its mouth. On the radio, Ray said, Good. Now listen. If the band is still out at 5, use gloves and put it back. Not before. Why 5? Because it likes to be asked. What does that mean? It means don't pick up something that is offering itself. Static cut through his voice. Then a second voice came over the radio. It was also Ray's voice. Clearer. Daniel Carter, it said. That is not me. I dropped the radio. The first Ray said very quietly, Turn it off. The second Ray said, Daniel Carter, answer your radio. I kicked the radio under the desk and backed away. It kept talking. Daniel Carter. Static. Daniel Carter. Static. Daniel Carter, you are scheduled for your meet and greet. I put both hands over my ears. The radio shut off by itself. The office felt too bright. I stood there breathing hard, staring at the thing under the desk. At 2:17, the clock did not stop. That almost made it worse. I kept waiting for it. I watched the second hand sweep past 2:16, then 2:17, then 2:18. Nothing happened. The heater kept humming. The monitors kept flickering. The radio stayed silent. False normal is a strange kind of fear. When something terrible happens and then everything goes back to routine, the routine becomes part of the terrible thing. The coffee maker still drips. The clock still ticks. The chair still squeaks. Your own hands still know how to turn pages and write the time. At 3:03, I heard children laughing. Not loud. Not close. It came from somewhere outside, near the Carousel Plaza. A small group of kids, maybe 3 or 4, giggling like they were hiding from someone. I froze. The sound came again. A little girl shushed another child. Then more laughter. Rule 3. If you hear children laughing after closing, turn the carousel music on for 1 minute, then off for 2. Repeat until the laughing stops. Do not go outside. The carousel switch was on the wall beside the breaker panel. It had a handwritten label. Carousel audio only. I flipped it on. The same cheerful tune from the night before started playing outside. It sounded wrong coming through the cameras and walls. Tinny warped too happy for the hour. The laughter stopped immediately. I watched the clock for 1 minute. Then I turned the music off. Silence. I waited 2 minutes. At 1 minute and 40 seconds, a child laughed again. Closer this time. Near the midway. I turned the music on. The laughter stopped. 1 minute on. 2 minutes off. Again. And again. I did this 6 times. Each time, the laughter resumed closer to the office. On the 7th time, it came from the hall. Right outside the door. A child whispered, "He's doing it wrong." Another child giggled. I had my hand on the music switch. The minute was almost up. I wanted to leave it on. The rule said 1 minute, then off for 2. Repeat until the laughing stops. It did not say what happened if they came inside. It did not say what happened if they laughed while the music was on. The park music played. Outside the office door, a child whispered, "Mister?" I did not answer. "Mister, my mom said to find Mary Mac." I watched the clock. 55 seconds. "Mister?" 58. "Mister, I lost my wristband." 60. I turned the music off. The hall went quiet. The 2 minutes that followed were the longest of my life up to that point. At 1 minute, something small dragged along the bottom of the door. At 1 minute and 30 seconds, the office phone rang. Not my cell. The office phone. A beige landline on the desk that Ray had told me not to use after 2. It rang once. Twice. 3 times. I let it ring. Outside the door, a child began to cry. The phone kept ringing. The crying got softer, like the child was walking away. Then the laughter came from the carousel again. Far away. I turned the music on. This time, when I turned it off after 1 minute, the laughter did not come back. I wrote in the log, 3:03 to 3:24 a.m. laughter. Carousel audio procedure followed. Stopped. I did not write that it came to the door. At 5, I put on the work gloves Ray had left in the drawer and went to Lost and Found. The hallway was empty. The wristband lay on the floor where it had fallen. The printed side faced up. I picked it up. For 1 second, through the gloves I felt warmth. Like skin. I dropped it into the plastic bin and pushed the bin back onto the shelf. Then I saw there were 2 wristbands in the bin. Both yellow. Both printed with my name. I did not count them. I closed the door. Ray arrived at 6. He did not ask if I was okay this time. He looked at me, then at the logbook, then at the unplugged printer. You heard it on the radio? Yes. Full name? Yes. You answer? No. Good. I heard you too. I didn't call. I figured. He sat down and rubbed his eyes. It used your voice. I said. Yeah. And kids? Yeah. How does it know? Ray didn't answer right away. Outside, dawn was making the park gray. Finally, he said, It learns by invitation. I didn't invite anything. You took the job. I wanted to be angry. I was angry. But I was also too tired to use it. That's not an invitation. Maybe not to us. I quit that morning. At least, I said the words. Ray nodded and told me he understood. He said he would tell the office I wasn't a fit. He said he'd cover the next 2 nights. I drove home feeling hollow and embarrassed and relieved. Then I slept 14 hours. When I woke up, I had 6 missed calls from Ray. The first 4 were from his cell. The last 2 were from Briar Glen's office number. The timestamp on the last call was 2:17 a.m. I called Ray back. No answer. I called again. No answer. I drove to his house, but his wife said he had gone to cover my shift and hadn't come home. She was angry at first. Then she saw my face and got quiet. We called the park office. No answer. She wanted to call the police. I told her she should. Then I drove to Briar Glen. I know that sounds stupid. It was stupid. But Ray had gone there because of me. The front gate was locked. His truck was in the lot. It was 11:40 in the morning. Daylight. Cold, clear, normal daylight. I used my keys and went in. The security office was empty. The logbook was open. Ray's last entries were ordinary until 2 o'clock. 10 p.m. clear. Office 67. No issues. 11 p.m. clear. No issues. 12 a.m. round complete. Mascot room not checked. 1 a.m. camera 6 interference. No visual. 2 a.m. phone activity. No answer. Then one final line. 2:17 a.m. Daniel Carter at gate. Asked to be let in? Did not answer. I read it 3 times. My hands went cold. Below that, in handwriting that was not Ray's, someone had written, Daniel Carter did not enter through the gate. I backed away from the desk. The monitors were on. Camera 6 showed the Mascot gate. Empty. Camera 12 showed lost and found. The bin with the wristbands was open again. Camera 1 showed the front gate. For a second, I thought the feed was frozen. Then I realized someone was standing just inside the gate. A man in Ray's coat. He faced away from the camera, looking into the park. I turned and ran out of the office. Ray! My voice sounded too loud in the empty park. The man at the gate did not turn. I ran down the front walkway. Ray! He stood with his back to me, shoulders hunched, hands at his sides. When I was about 10 feet away, he spoke. Don't come closer. It was Ray's voice. I stopped. Are you hurt? He did not answer. Ray. He raised one hand and pointed toward the Mascot room. The heads, he said. What? I forgot the heads. It was almost noon. Rule once said before midnight. Ray, come on. We need to leave. He turned slightly. Not enough for me to see his face. You shouldn't have come back. he said. Then the park speakers crackled. A cheerful woman's recorded voice came through, thin and warped. Good morning, Briar Glen guests. Mary Mac and friends will be appearing today for photos in the birthday grove. The speakers popped. Then silence. Ray laughed once. It did not sound like him. I stepped forward. He said, Danny, don't. That time it sounded exactly like him. So I stopped. The man in Ray's coat lowered his head. You have to finish the shift, he said. What? It has your name now. If you leave it with your name, it keeps looking. I quit. He shook his head. Not how it works. Behind him, something moved near the ticket booths. I saw Gray first slip behind the glass. Mary Mac's head appeared in the little ticket window. Just the head. No body. Its glossy eyes stared at me from inside the booth. Ray whispered, Don't look at it in daylight. That was not on the rules. I looked away. When I looked back, Ray was gone. Not walked away. Gone. His coat lay on the ground near the gate. I did not search the park. I called the police from the parking lot. They came, took my statement, searched the grounds, and found nothing except Ray's coat, his keys, and his thermos in the office. His truck was still there. His phone was found in the lost and found bin under a pile of old hats. There were no signs of a struggle. The cameras had stopped recording at 2:17 and resumed at 5:59. The police asked me why I had access to the park if I had quit. I told them I still had the keys. They asked why Ray had written that I was at the gate. I said I didn't know. They asked why there was an old guest wristband in Lost and found with my name on it. I said I didn't know. That part was true, at least in the legal sense. Ray was listed as missing. People searched for 3 days. Park staff, police, volunteers, dogs. They checked the woods behind the fence, the drainage culverts, the ride buildings, the old maintenance tunnels, the lake at the edge of the property. Nothing. The local paper ran one short article. Caretaker missing from closed Briar Glen Park. There was a picture of Ray from 10 years earlier, smiling awkwardly at a picnic table. His wife asked me what happened. I told her everything I could, except the parts that would have made her think I was using grief to tell ghost stories. She never forgave me anyway. I don't blame her. The park owners called me 4 days later. I expected questions. Maybe accusations. Maybe a lawyer. Instead, a woman named Ms. Voss asked if I would return to work. I almost hung up. She spoke in a flat, professional voice, like she was offering me a shift at a grocery store. We understand Mr. Hanley provided your initial training, she said. Ray is missing. Yes. From your park. Yes. And you're calling to ask if I can cover nights? We are calling because the position cannot remain vacant. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, phone pressed to my ear, staring at laundry on the floor. Call someone else. We have. Then call more people. You are familiar with the procedures. I laughed. It sounded bad. Procedures. Mr. Carter, there are liabilities associated with leaving the property unattended overnight. There are liabilities associated with whatever the hell is in your Mascot room. Silence. Then she said, Mr. Hanley signed a confidentiality agreement, as did all employees with access to restricted operations. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining the terms. Your employee disappeared. Yes. Does that happen a lot? Another pause. No, she said. Not never. No. I hung up. That should have been the end. For 2 nights, I ignored calls from Briar Glen. On the third night, at 2:17 a.m., my bedroom clock stopped. It was a cheap digital clock. It should not have stopped at all. The room went silent. Then music began playing from somewhere outside my apartment. Carousel music. Thin and distant. I lived on the second floor of a brick building above a pharmacy. There was no carousel within 30 miles. I lay in bed and did not move. My phone screen would not turn on. In the dark corner near my closet, something breathed through fabric. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a slow, damp breath, like someone inside a costume trying not to be heard. The music stopped at 2:18. My clock started again. In the morning, there was a yellow wristband on my bathroom sink. Daniel Carter. Mary Mac meet and greet. Valid today? I drove to Briar Glen before sunset and asked for the job back. That is the part people don't understand unless they have been inside something like this. Sometimes fear does not make you run. Sometimes it teaches you where the fence is. Sometimes the safest place is the place that has rules. Ms. Voss met me at the gate. She was in her 50s, maybe, with short silver hair and a long black coat. She did not look like someone who had ever eaten amusement park food. She carried a clipboard and smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. "I'm sorry about Mr. Hanley," she said. "You knew Ray?" "I knew his role." That was the kind of answer she gave. She walked me to the office and gave me an updated employee packet. Tax forms, emergency contacts, incident reporting, a map of the property, a laminated copy of the Mascot rules. I looked at the laminated sheet. There were still 7 rules, but one had changed. Rule 4 now read. 4. If Mary Mac waves from the Mascot gate camera, wave back once with your left hand and look away. If he waves with his left hand, do not wave back. I pointed to it. This was different before. Ms. Voss looked at the sheet. Procedures are updated after incidents. What incident? Mr. Carter. What incident? She met my eyes. Yours. I didn't know what she meant. I would. She left at 9:55. Before she went, she told me one more thing. The park may attempt to establish familiarity. Do not accept corrections from voices. Do not accept memories that arrive during a shift. Do not ask mascots questions, even if they seem to be employees. That should be on the rules. It used to be. Why isn't it? Too many rules make new staff careless. Then she left me alone. That third shift was when the park started getting personal. It did not begin with a camera or the radio. It began with a smell. At 10:34, while I was checking the logbook, the office filled with the smell of my mother's kitchen. Not close. Not exactly. But enough. Garlic, onions, burnt butter, and the cheap lemon cleaner she used on the counters. It came so suddenly that I had to sit down. My mother had been dead for 6 years. She had died in her sleep after a stroke, and for months afterward, I would wake up thinking I smelled her apartment. Grief does that. It makes your brain cruel. But this was not memory. This was in the room. The heater pushed it through the vent. I stood on the chair and sniffed near the duct like an idiot. Then the office phone rang. I did not answer. On the second ring, the answering machine picked up. I did not know the phone had an answering machine. A beep sounded. Then my mother's voice said, "Danny, honey, are you eating?" I gripped the desk. The voice was quiet, full of sleep, like she had called from bed. "I made too much. Come home before it gets cold." The message ended. The tape clicked. I stood there until my knees hurt. Then the machine rewound by itself. The message played again. "Danny, honey, are you eating?" I unplugged the phone from the wall. The voice stopped in the middle of eating. I did not cry. Not then. Instead, I wrote 10:36 p.m. office phone activity. Did not answer. Phone unplugged. Workplace habits are strange. Even when reality breaks open, you still fill out the form. At 11:20, camera 7 showed the arcade lights on. The arcade was called Max Mine. It had fake timber beams, painted rocks, and old claw machines. Ray had said not to go in unless there was visible damage. The power was supposed to be off except for the emergency lights. On the monitor, I saw rows of machines glowing. At first, I thought Ms. Voss or someone else had turned the breaker on. Then I saw a figure standing in front of the skee-ball lanes. A child. Small. Maybe 7. He had his back to the camera. He wore a winter coat. I zoomed in before I remembered I probably shouldn't. The child turned. It was me. Not exactly me as a man. Me at 7 years old. The same bowl haircut. Same blue coat. Same striped shirt I had worn in the old Briar Glen photo with Mary Mac. I knew it because my mother had kept that photo on the fridge until the magnet broke. The child looked up at the camera. Then he raised his left hand. And waved. I almost waved back. My hand moved before thought. Then I saw the mascot standing behind him. Mary Mac was at the end of the arcade aisle, half hidden behind a claw machine. One big glove rested on top of the child's head. The child smiled. My smile. I looked away. The camera feed flickered. When I looked back, the arcade was dark. At midnight I had to do a round. I considered skipping it. I nearly wrote, "Round skip due to suspected trespasser." But I knew that was cowardice wearing paperwork as a hat. The rules did not say I could skip rounds unless weather was bad. So I took the flashlight, radio, keys, and a can of wasp spray I found under the sink. The park was colder than before. The front gate was secure. The midway was empty. Near the ring toss booth, I found an old photograph lying in the path. It was face down. I did not want to pick it up. But it was physical proof of something, and people always think proof will help. I turned it over with my shoe. It was the photo of me at 7 standing with Mary Mac. Not a copy. The actual photo. The corners were bent. The lower edge had the small brown stain from when my mother spilled coffee on the fridge, and it ran down the picture. My name was written on the back in her handwriting. Danny, Briar Glen, 2004. My mother's copy should have been in a shoebox in my old closet. In the photo, Mary Mac stood beside me with one hand on my shoulder. I remembered that. But there was something I did not remember. Behind us, in the dark opening of the Mascot gate, a man stood watching. Ray. Younger, but clearly Ray. He was not smiling. I put the photo in my jacket pocket. I don't know why. Maybe I thought if I left it there, it would mean I had accepted it. The rest of the round was normal, until I reached the Mascot room. The front door was open. Just a few inches. The rules said the heads had to face the wall before midnight. It was 12:12. Too late. I stood outside the door and listened. Nothing. I called Ray's name once before I could stop myself. Not loudly. Just, "Ray?" The door creaked open another inch. Inside, a fluorescent light flickered. I could see the shelves. The heads were facing the room. All of them. I did not count. But I saw Mary Mac in the middle. And beside him, on the far end of the shelf, there was a new head. Human-shaped. Not realistic. Not a mask of skin. A mascot head. A big soft cartoon version of Ray's face. Gray eyebrows. Friendly smile. Red cheeks. A baseball cap sewn to the top. I backed away. A voice from inside the room said, "You forgot one." It was Ray. I ran. I am not ashamed of that. I ran back to the office, locked the door, and sat with my back against it until my breathing slowed. The radio crackled from the desk. "Daniel Carter," my mother's voice said, "you left your picture outside." I turned the radio off. It turned itself back on. "Daniel Carter," Ray's voice said, "you didn't finish your round." I took the batteries out. The radio kept talking for 3 more seconds. "Daniel Carter," my own voice said, "you already waved." Then it died. I looked at the laminated rules on the wall. Rule 4. If Mary Mac waves from the Mascot gate camera, wave back once with your left hand and look away. If he waves with his left hand, do not wave back. I did not know why that mattered yet. At 2:17, the clock stopped again. This time, I was ready. Door locked. Lights off. Chair pushed back so I could stand without moving. Phone unplugged. Radio batteries out. The clock stopped. The heater shut off. The monitors froze. On camera 6, Mary Mac stood in the Mascot gate. He raised his left hand. I did not wave. It was one of the hardest things I have ever done. That sounds ridiculous until you understand how badly the place wanted a response. Everything in that office seemed to lean toward the screen. The dark monitors. The silent phone. The unplugged printer. The dead radio. A mascot on a camera waved its left hand. I stood in the dark and did nothing. Then the feed changed. It was still camera 6, but the angle was wrong. The Mascot gate looked farther away, like the camera had moved backward. The tunnel stretched longer than it should have. The mural figures on the wall looked more detailed. Mary Mac's painted face seemed to turn toward the screen. Another figure stepped into view. A man. Me. I stood in the Mascot gate on the monitor, wearing my security jacket. My face was pale and blank. I looked straight at the camera. Then the me on the screen raised his right hand. Not left. Right. He waved once. The real me almost waved back. I can't explain the feeling except to say it was like seeing someone across the street who had mistaken you for an old friend. Your body wants to answer before your mind knows why. I kept my hands at my sides. On the screen, my other self lowered his hand. Mary Mac turned his head toward him. Slowly. The other me opened his mouth. The park speakers came on. My voice filled the park. "Daniel Carter," it said. "You are late." The music started then. I stood in the dark and did not move until it stopped. In the morning, the photo was gone from my pocket. In its place was a yellow wristband. Not paper this time. Plastic. Like the old season pass bands they used to give kids during summer events. My name was printed on it, but not like the others. This one said, "Daniel Carter. Cast." I put it in Lost and Found before sunrise. Then I threw up in the bathroom sink. The next few weeks passed in a pattern that is hard to explain without making it sound normal. It was not normal. But routine can wrap around anything. I worked 4 nights a week. Sometimes 5. Ms. Voss came by during the day and left notes. A maintenance guy named Ellis handled repairs before dark. I met him twice. He was thin, nervous, and never stayed past 6. The police stopped calling about Ray. His wife stopped answering my calls. The park remained closed. I learned the sounds of the place. The metal tick of cooling ride parts. The hollow knock of wind inside the prize booths. The buzz of dying lights. The slap of loose tarps. The scamper of real animals, which were easy to tell from everything else because animals did not try to sound human. I learned which rules happened often. Camera 6 was the worst. Mary Mac appeared there at least twice a week. Sometimes he only stood in the tunnel. Sometimes he waved with his right hand, and I waved back once with my left and looked away. Sometimes he waved with his left hand, and I did nothing. The children's laughter came every 10 days or so. The carousel music always stopped it eventually, but it took longer each time. The wristbands appeared in strange places. Under my coffee cup. Inside the microwave. Once wrapped around the handle of my car door when I left in the morning. I always put them in Lost and Found before sunrise. I never counted mascot heads after midnight. I never rewound footage. I never answered my full name. That was how I survived. The park did not like being survived. It got patient. At first, it used obvious things. My mother. Ray. My own childhood. Then it moved to smaller, sharper memories. At 12:30 one night, the ticket printer, still unplugged, printed the name of a girl I dated when I was 19. I had not thought about her in years. At 1:15, the arcade camera showed my old apartment hallway. At 3 o'clock, a voice from under the desk whispered the last thing my father said to me before the accident, even though I had never told anyone what it was. None of it attacked. That was the worst part. It requested. It invited. It corrected. One night the radio said, in Ray's voice, "You're doing good, kid." I almost answered. Not because I believed it was Ray. Because I needed someone to say it. The rules became less like instructions and more like a language. A mascot appeared. You logged it. A voice used your full name. You withheld your answer. A wristband appeared. You returned it. Children laughed. You played music. The clock stopped. You disappeared into stillness. It was a conversation where my side had to be silence, repetition, and refusal. Then came the night of the staff party. That is what I call it because I don't know what else to call it. It was December 14th, cold, dry, no snow yet. The kind of night where the air felt like metal. At 9:52, Ms. Voss arrived with an envelope. She gave it to me in the office. "Updated payroll form," she said. I opened it after she left. Inside was not a payroll form. It was an old Briar Glen event flyer. Employee Holiday Family Night. December 14th, 1996. Park open after hours. Special mascot parade at midnight. At the bottom, someone had written in red pen, "Do not stay for the parade." I checked the rules. Nothing about a parade. I called Ms. Voss. No answer. I called Ellis. Straight to voicemail. I called the number Ray used to call me from, even though I knew better. It rang once, then disconnected. At 10:15, the park lights came on. Not all of them. Just the decorative ones. The midway bulbs blinked awake in rows. The signs glowed. Red and yellow lights chased around game booth awnings. The carousel plaza brightened under strings of bulbs I had never seen work. On the cameras, Briar Glen looked open. Empty but open. The office speakers crackled. A recording played. "Attention, team members. Please report to the birthday grove for tonight's family celebration. Mascots line up at 11:45. Parade begins at midnight sharp." The voice was cheerful and female. Under it, faintly, I heard someone crying. I wrote everything in the log. 10:15 p.m. Decorative lights active. Announcement over PA. No action taken. At 10:30, the lost and found camera showed movement. The bins shook on the shelves. One by one, wristbands spilled onto the floor. Not just mine. Dozens. Hundreds. They poured like paper snakes from the bins and shelf gaps, uncurling across the floor. Names faced the camera. I saw Ray Hanley, Marty Bloom, Elise Warren. Names I didn't know. Some old. Some new. Then a wristband slid into the center of the room by itself. Larger than the others. White. Not yellow. The camera focused for no reason. Daniel Carter. Mascot Escort. Report 11:45 p.m. I stayed in the office. At 11 o'clock, camera 6 showed mascots in the gate. Not one. All of them. Mary Mac stood in front. Dolly Deer behind him. Benny Beaver. Jasper Jack. The Pinecone Pals. The blank rehearsal head on a body that looked too thin. And a mascot with raised cartoon head. They stood in a row, facing the camera. No one waved. I wrote. 11 p.m. camera 6. Multiple mascots visible. No rewind. My hand shook so badly the pen tore the paper. At 11:20, the office door opened. I know I locked it. I know I did. The knob turned, the latch clicked, and the door swung inward. No one stood in the hallway. At the threshold lay my security jacket. The one I was wearing. I looked down at myself. I was wearing it. I looked back at the doorway. The jacket on the floor was also mine. Same tear near the cuff. Same coffee stain. Same name tag. D. Carter. Inside the jacket was a walkie-talkie. It crackled. My own voice said, "Don't be late." I closed the door and locked it again. At 11:45, every camera cut to the mascot room. That should not have been possible. All 12 monitors showed different angles of the same room. Some angles were from corners where no cameras existed. One looked down from the ceiling. One looked out from a shelf, between two mascot heads. One looked from inside a costume mouth. The mascot bodies hung on racks. The heads faced the wall. For a second, I felt relief. Then they turned around. All of them. Not at once. One after another. Mary Mac first. Then Dolly. Then Benny. Then Jasper. Then Ray. Then a head I did not recognize. It was a cartoon version of me. Brown hair. Tired eyes. Uneven smile. A little security cap sewn on top. The face was friendly. That made it worse. The office phone rang even though it was unplugged. The radio without batteries crackled. The ticket printer clicked. The old computer monitor turned on by itself. All of them spoke in different voices at once. Daniel Carter. Daniel Carter. Daniel Carter. Daniel Carter. Full name. From everywhere. I pressed my hands over my ears and stared at the clock. 11:47. The rules did not cover this. The voices continued. Not shouting. Not angry. Calling roll. That was what it sounded like. A classroom teacher taking attendance. Daniel Carter. Ray Hanley. Marty Bloom. Elise Warren. Names from the wristbands. More names I did not know. Some voices answered. Here. 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 I kept my mouth shut. Then my mother's voice said, Daniel Carter. I shut my eyes. The voice waited. The room waited with it. I tasted blood because I was biting my tongue. The PA system outside played a chime. A new announcement began. All mascots and escorts to the birthday grove. The parade will begin in 10 minutes. The monitors returned to normal. Camera 6 showed the mascot gate. Empty. Camera 3 showed the midway. Empty. Camera 4 showed the carousel. The tarp was gone. The carousel horses stood uncovered, painted eyes wide, poles gleaming in the decorative lights. The platform did not move, but the horses were in different positions every time the feed flickered. At 11:55 I heard knocking. Not at the office door. Under the floor. 3 soft knocks. Then 3 more. I did not have a rule for floorboards. The office was built on concrete. There should not have been a hollow space underneath. Knock. 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 A voice whispered. Danny. Ray. I stepped back. Danny, listen to me. I did not answer. It's not the mascots, he whispered. The floor under the desk creaked upward slightly, like something beneath it pressed a hand against it. I know what the rule means now. I stared at the floor. What rule? I whispered before I could stop myself. The office went silent. I had answered. Not my full name. Not the radio. Not the phone. But I had answered something. The floor settled. Ray's voice said, Left hand. I stopped breathing. The wave? He whispered. It isn't saying hello. A sound came from outside. Music. Not the carousel tune. A march. Slow drums. Tinny horns. Cymbals that dragged behind the beat. The parade. Ray whispered. It's asking which one is real. I looked at camera 6. Mary Mac stood in the Mascot gate. He raised his right hand. Rule 4 said if he waves from the Mascot gate camera, wave back once with your left hand and look away. I had done that for weeks. Ray's voice whispered under the floor. When you wave left, it knows you're watching from the right side. I did not understand. Then I did. The camera. The monitor reversed the image. All those times I thought Mary Mac waved with his right hand, he had been waving with his left. All those times I waved back with my left, on the camera it would have looked like my right. The updated rule had not meant what I thought. If he waves with his left hand, do not wave back. But on the monitor, left and right were not left and right. I had been answering the wrong wave. I had been telling it I did not know which side of the glass I was on. The Mascot on camera 6 lowered its hand. Then it waved again. Same hand. Now I could not tell which one. The office lights flickered. The clock read 11:58. The parade music grew louder outside. Ray's voice whispered, Don't look at the screen. That was not a rule. It was advice. Maybe it was Ray. Maybe it wasn't. I looked away from the monitor. The music passed the office. I heard wheels squeaking on pavement. Big soft feet dragging. Fabric brushing fabric. Something wooden creaking. A crowd of children laughing in time with the march. Through the covered office window, shadows moved across the blinds. Tall heads. Antlers. Ears. A big ringed tail. I stood with my back to the monitors and faced the wall. The park outside cheered. Not many voices. Just enough to sound like a crowd if you wanted it to. A child called, Mary Mac! Another shouted, Over here! The parade slowed outside the office. The doorknob turned. Locked. The knob turned again. Then someone knocked. A soft Mascot glove against wood. The voice on the other side was mine. Daniel Carter, it said. I did not answer. Daniel Carter, you're missing the parade. I stared at the wall. The voice changed to Ray. Danny, open up. Then my mother. Danny, honey, don't be rude. Then Ms. Voss. Mr. Carter, failure to report will be documented. Then the child version of me. I want my picture. The clock struck midnight. It did not chime. It just clicked from 11:59 to 12 o'clock. Every monitor behind me went black. I heard the office chair move. I had not touched it. The wheels rolled slowly over the floor, then stopped. Someone sat down. Behind me. At the desk. I could hear breathing inside a mask. A gloved hand tapped the keyboard. Click. 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 The printer, unplugged, printed. A strip of paper fell to the floor. The thing behind me breathed. Then, in my own voice, it said, "Round complete." I wanted to turn around more than I have ever wanted anything. Not because I was brave. Because not looking felt impossible. Fear makes you curious in a sick way. It tells you that seeing the thing will put a border around it. A shape. A size. An answer. The rules had taught me better. I kept facing the wall. The thing behind me stood. The chair rolled back. Soft feet crossed the office. It stopped close enough that I could feel the fabric brush the back of my jacket. It leaned in. The smell was old fur, dust, and dried soda. Inside the costume head, my voice whispered into my ear, "You already came in." Then the door opened. The parade music faded down the hall. The office door closed. The lights came back. I turned around. The room was empty. On the desk, the logbook was open. A new entry had been written beneath mine. 12 a.m. parade past office. Daniel Carter did not attend. Daniel Carter remained inside. Daniel Carter observed from correct side. For a second, I felt relief. Then I saw the next line. 12:01 a.m. invite remains active. At 2:17, the clock stopped. I followed the procedure. At 3:03, the children laughed. I played the carousel music. At 4 o'clock, I did not do my round. I couldn't. At 5 o'clock, I went to Lost and Found with gloves and found the white wristband on the floor. Daniel Carter. Mascot escort. I picked it up and placed it in the bin. Under it was another band. This one said, Daniel Carter. Mary Mac. I did not touch that one. I closed the bin. At sunrise, the decorative lights shut off. The park looked abandoned again. Ms. Voss arrived at 6:05. She read the log without expression. When she reached the line about the invite remaining active, her mouth tightened slightly. "That's not uncommon," she said. "I misunderstood Rule 4. "Yes. You knew the camera was reversed. All cameras are reversed depending on installation. Why not write that down?" "We did." She tapped the laminated page. I looked at it. Rule 4 had changed again. It now read, 4. If Mary Mac waves from the Mascot gate camera, do not assume the hand you see is the hand he raised. If unsure, do not wave. I stared at the page. That wasn't what it said yesterday. Procedures are updated after incidents. What incident? She did not answer. I laughed, and this time there was something ugly in it. So I'm training the rules by surviving them? Ms. Voss closed the logbook. You're clarifying them. For who? For whoever comes next. That was the first time I understood that the rules were not old wisdom. They were a record of mistakes. Each rule was someone finding the edge by bleeding against it, even if there was no blood. Someone counted heads and learned not to count. Someone rewound footage and learned not to rewind. Someone wore the wristband. Someone answered their full name. Someone waved wrong. And now something had learned from me. I stayed at Briar Glen through winter. I know that sounds insane. Maybe it is. But the calls stopped at my apartment. The wristbands stopped appearing in my bathroom. My mother's voice stayed inside the park. Ray's voice came less often. The rules worked if I followed them, and work outside the park seemed less real than work inside it. That is another thing people don't understand. Once your life has a monster in it, ordinary life starts feeling fake. Bills still come. Cars still need gas. Landlords still want rent. People still ask how you're doing and expect one of the 3 answers they can handle. At Briar Glen, at least, I knew what not to say. By February, snow covered the park. The midway disappeared under white. The carousel tarp sagged. Icicles hung from the food stand awnings. Animal tracks crossed the paths in the mornings, but never after midnight. The park was quieter in snow. Too quiet. Sound did not carry the same way. Sometimes I would look at a camera and see snow falling straight down, then look out the window and see none. Sometimes the cameras showed footprints that were not there when I checked in person at dawn. I stopped checking in person. Ms. Voss brought a new rules sheet in March. 8 rules now. The new one was number 8. 8. If snow falls upward on any camera, do not look outside to confirm the weather. I asked whose mistake that was. She said, Ellis. I never saw the maintenance guy again. In April, the owners decided to reopen part of the park for private events. That is what Ms. Voss told me. Not a full reopening. Just rentals. Corporate picnics. Birthday packages. Limited daytime access to safe zones. I told her that was a terrible idea. She said the daytime park had always been manageable. Manageable, I repeated. Yes. With mascots? No roaming mascots. Good. Static character displays only. That sounded worse to me, but no one asked. Crews came during the day to clean and repaint. They replaced boards on the stage, patched roofs, cleared brush, pressure washed the midway. They hauled away broken arcade machines and brought in temporary fencing to block the old rides. They also opened the mascot room. I was not there when they did it. I arrived one evening to find the wardrobe building empty. No costume bodies. No feet. No gloves. No heads. Just bare racks and dust outlines on the shelves. I walked straight back to the office and called Ms. Voss. Where are they? Storage. Where? Off-site. Bring them back. That will not be possible. You don't understand. I understand better than you do. For once, her voice had an edge. Do they follow the suits? I asked. No. Then what? She said nothing. What happens when there are no mascot heads to face the wall? She breathed out slowly. Follow the remaining rules. That night, at 11:59, the empty shelves in the mascot room camera turned toward the wall. I don't know how else to say it. There were no heads. But the empty spaces faced the wall. At 12:01, the camera showed them facing the room. Spaces can look at you. I know that now. The private events started in May. During the day, families came back to Briar Glen. Not many. Local people. Nostalgia people. Parents who remembered it from childhood and wanted pictures of their kids under the old signs. The owners opened the front midway, Carousel Plaza, Picnic Grove, and 3 game booths with no prizes worth stealing. They hung new banners. Briar Glen Summer Preview. Memories are waiting. That slogan made me sick. The park hired daytime staff. Teenagers mostly. College kids. A retired teacher for guest services. A food truck parked near the gate because the kitchens still weren't certified. Guests posted pictures online. Kids smiled in front of the Mary Mac mural. Parents commented about how nice it was to see the place coming back. Nobody knew what happened after dark. That is how most bad places survive. They learn to look harmless at the right time. One afternoon in June, before my shift, I arrived early and saw a birthday party leaving. Maybe 20 kids. Balloons. Paper crowns. Parents carrying coolers. A little girl cried because she had dropped her stuffed animal. I stood by my car and watched them pass through the gate. One boy, maybe 7, stopped and looked at me. He wore a yellow wristband. Not unusual. The reopened park used yellow paper bands for guests. He said, "You're not supposed to be here during the day." His mother tugged his hand. "Come on, Owen." The boy kept looking at me. He said, "Your night?" I felt my stomach drop. "Who said that?" I asked. His mother gave me a nervous smile and pulled him away. The boy pointed back toward the Mascot gate. Mary Mac. There were no mascots in the park. No roaming mascots. No costume heads. No static display near the gate that day. I watched the family leave. Then I went to the office and checked lost and found. In the bin where I put my wristbands, there was a child's paper crown. On the inside, in crayon, someone had written, "Danny's night." That night, I added my own rule to a sticky note and put it under the laminated sheet. Do not trust daytime stories about Mary Mac. The next morning, the sticky note was gone. In its place, Rule 9 had appeared on the laminated sheet. 9. Do not accept messages from children who attended the park during daylight hours. I did not tell Ms. Voss. By then, I had started to understand something else. The park was not just active at night. It was awake at night. During the day, it listened. It let people in. It watched them smile. It learned their names from wristbands and waivers and birthday songs. It collected voices. It collected habits. It collected the little facts people gave away without thinking. Then at night, it tried them on. The Mascot rules were not about costumes. Not really. The costumes were just the easiest shape for the park to use. People understood mascots. You expected them to be silent. You expected them to wave. You expected their faces not to move. You expected them to stand too close and be forgiven for it. A mascot could be wrong in 100 ways before you admitted it was not a person. By late summer, I had been at Briar Glen almost a year. I had stopped telling myself I would quit. That is hard to admit. I had become part of the routine. I carried keys. I logged cameras. I maintained the rules. I knew which hallway lights flickered before a bad night. I knew that if the office smelled like popcorn, I should not eat anything until sunrise. I knew if camera 6 went black but the others stayed on, something was standing too close to it. I knew not to look for Ray. Then Marty came back. It was August 22nd. Hot night. Heavy air. Thunder in the distance. At 10:08, a car pulled into the lot. That almost never happened after closing. I checked camera 2. An older sedan sat near the front gate with its lights on. A man got out. Thin. Gray hair. Work jacket. He moved slowly, like someone whose joints hurt. He walked to the gate and stood there. The radio crackled. "Danny?" I did not answer. The man looked up at the camera. "I know you can see me." He held up both hands. No radio. My office phone rang. I let it ring. My cell phone buzzed. Unknown number. I did not answer. The man at the gate took something from his pocket and held it toward the camera. A laminated Briar Glen ID badge. Martin Bloom. Night security. Marty. The old night guy. The one who left. I called Ms. Voss. No answer. I called the emergency number in the packet. A recording said the number was not in service. At the gate, Marty sat down on the pavement. He looked exhausted. After 10 minutes, he shouted through the bars. "I'm not coming in. I just need to tell you something." I opened the office window an inch. It did not face him, but sound carried. "Say it from there," I shouted. He looked relieved and frightened at the same time. "You're Daniel Carter?" I did not answer. He laughed weakly. "Good. Good. Don't confirm names. Ray taught you?" I stayed silent. Marty nodded. "Okay. Listen. Voss won't tell you this. The rules don't keep it out. They teach it manners." I gripped the window frame. "What does that mean?" "It can't do everything at once. It needs patterns. Permission. Repetition. The rules give it a game it understands." "Why are you here?" "Because it started calling my daughter." The thunder rolled closer. Marty wiped sweat from his forehead. "I moved 3 states away. Didn't matter. At first it was only dreams. Then music. Then wristbands. I came back because I thought if I returned the old ones, maybe it would stop." He held up a plastic bag. Inside were wristbands. A lot of them. "Don't bring those in," I said. "I know." "Then leave." "I can't." "Why not?" He looked behind him, toward the road. The parking lot lights flickered. "When I turned off Route 19, he said, the road behind me wasn't there anymore." I didn't understand until I looked at camera 2 again. The parking lot ended in darkness. Not normal night darkness. Empty black. Route 19 should have been visible beyond the lot. There should have been trees, a guardrail, the reflective curve sign, maybe distant headlights. There was nothing. Marty stood up. "It makes a closed loop when it wants you back," he shouted. Ray knew. Elise knew. The others knew. "You can leave when it lets you leave. Not before." The front gate lock clicked. I heard it from the office through the cameras and the open window. Marty heard it too. He stared at the gate. "Don't," he said. The gate swung inward. "Just a foot. An invitation." Marty backed away. From inside the park, the PA system chimed. "Welcome back, team member," Marty cried then. Not loudly. Just a broken sound in his throat. The bag of wristbands slipped from his hand. Yellow strips spilled across the pavement. The wind pushed them through the open gate. I left the office. I should not have. There was no rule for this. Or maybe all of them were the rule. I ran down the midway toward the front gate, keys in hand. The decorative lights flickered on as I passed. Game booths lit up. Old bells rang once. The carousel music started and stopped like someone testing it. Marty stood outside the gate, refusing to cross. The wristbands slid along the ground toward me. One stuck to my shoe. I kicked it off. "Marty!" I shouted. He looked at me. For 1 second, he was just an old man in a parking lot, terrified and alone. Then something behind him waved. Not in the park. In the black where the road should have been. A Mascot hand? Huge and pale. Marty saw my face change. He turned. The black opened like a curtain. I saw lights behind it. Midway lights? The same park. Another Briar Glen on the far side of the parking lot, bright and crowded and silent. Mascots lined the entrance. Guests stood in rows. Children holding balloons. Adults with blank faces. All of them watching. At the front stood Mary Mac. He raised his left hand. Or right. I could not tell anymore. Marty whispered. "No." The PA system behind me said. "Parade begins in 5 minutes." Marty ran through the gate. Not into the park. Past me, down the midway. I turned to follow, but the rule came back. If a guest asks for a room that does not exist, refuse once and step away. That wasn't one of our rules. It was from some other job. Some motel desk I had worked years before. For a second, I smelled motel carpet and cigarette cleaner. The park had reached into the wrong part of me. That scared me more than the black parking lot. It was not just using Briar Glen anymore. It was using anything I had ever survived. I looked back at the lot. Route 19 was there again. Marty's car was gone. The bag was gone. The gate was still open. I locked it. Then I went looking for Marty. I found him on camera 6 before I found him in person. He was standing in the Mascot gate with his back to the camera. Mary Mac stood in front of him. The two of them faced each other like people having a quiet conversation. I did not rewind. I wrote it down. 10:47 p.m. camera 6. Marty Bloom visible with Mary Mac. Then I went to the Mascot gate. Marty was gone. On the ground lay his old Briar Glen ID badge. And a yellow wristband. Martin Bloom. Mary Mac meet and greet. Valid today? I put it in lost and found before sunrise. I never saw Marty again. In September, Ms. Voss brought me a new hire. His name was Aaron. 23. College dropout. Friendly in a nervous way. Needed money. Had worked at a grocery store and a movie theater. He kept making jokes because silence made him uncomfortable. I hated him immediately for being new. That was unfair, but it was true. Ms. Voss said he would shadow me for 3 nights. I said no. She said, the position requires redundancy. I said, this place eats redundancy. Aaron laughed because he thought I was kidding. Ms. Voss did not. Training someone on the rules felt like handing them a loaded gun and refusing to explain bullets. I showed him the cameras, the logbook, the keys, the walking route, the carousel switch, the radio channels. Then I showed him the laminated rules. There were 10 now. The 10th had appeared after Marty. 10. If the road beyond the front lot is not visible, do not open the gate for anyone, even former employees. Aaron read the list and grinned. Is this like a scare thing? No. Come on. No. His smile faded a little. You're serious? Yes. He read the rules again. Do not count Mascot heads after midnight, he said. Dude, there are no Mascot heads anymore. Then why keep the rule? Because the rule is not about the heads. He looked at me like I had disappointed him. That was the look people give when they want a ghost story and get a workplace safety briefing. At 11:30, I took him on the round. I explained every boring thing I could. Where water pooled after rain. Which lock stuck. How to tell a deer from a person on camera 9. Why not to touch the breaker labeled arcade even though it controlled the bathroom fan? We passed the Mascot gate. Aaron stopped. Is that the old character tunnel? Yes. Can we look? No. Why? Because we don't need to. He looked through the tunnel anyway. Nothing happened. That was almost worse. He smirked. At 12:15, the ticket printer clicked. I had not plugged it in for months. A strip came out. 1 adult training admission. Guest, Aaron Miller. Escort, Daniel Carter. Aaron stared at it. How did it? Don't touch it. Is this you? No. Is this Ms. Voss? No. He leaned closer. I grabbed his wrist. Do not touch it. That got through to him. At 1:06, camera 6 flickered. Mary Mac appeared in the Mascot gate. Aaron whispered, "No way." I opened the logbook. Camera 6. 106. Mascot visible. Is someone in there? Don't rewind. What? Do not rewind. He looked at the playback controls. His hand moved toward the mouse. I said his name sharply. He stopped. Mary Mac raised a hand. I looked carefully. I could not tell which hand. "Look away," I said. "But, look away." He did. So did I. After a few seconds, Aaron whispered, "Do we wave?" "No. If unsure, do not wave." The office was silent. Then Aaron whispered, "It's still there." "You looked?" "No." "How do you know?" "I can hear it breathing." I could too. Not from the monitor. From the hall. The smell of wet fabric crept under the door. Aaron began to shake. I put one hand on his shoulder. "Don't speak if it uses your full name." He nodded. The radio crackled. "Aaron Miller," a woman's voice said. "Your mother is at guest services." Aaron's face broke. He reached for the radio. I pulled his hand back. "My mom's dead," he whispered. "I know. I didn't know. But I knew enough." The radio said, "Aaron Miller, she says she is sorry." Aaron made a sound like he had been hit. I held his wrist hard enough that he would probably bruise. "Don't answer." The radio clicked. Then my mother's voice said, "Daniel Carter, let the boy talk." I closed my eyes. Aaron sobbed once. The hallway breathing stopped. On the monitor, Mary Mac was gone. Aaron quit the next morning. I was glad. I also hated him for leaving. Ms. Voss did not send another trainee. After that, the park changed again. Not every night. Just enough. The rules remained, but the incidents became less like tests and more like maintenance. That is the only word I have. Maintenance. As if the park had accepted that I knew my role. It still tried me. Of course it did. But it also depended on me. If laughter started, I played the music. If wristbands appeared, I returned them. If the clock stopped, I performed stillness. If the cameras showed something, I logged it. I began to wonder what would happen if no one did those things. Not to me. To everyone. To the daytime guests. To the road. To the town. Maybe that was how the park kept people like me. Not just fear. Responsibility. A bad place will make you feel important if it cannot make you feel safe. The final night I want to tell you about was last week. I still don't know if it was my last shift. That depends on what happens tonight. It was June 20th. Hot, humid storm warning. The kind of night when thunderheads sit over the mountains and don't move. The park had hosted a private retirement party that afternoon. Teachers, I think. There were folding chairs still stacked near the picnic grove when I arrived. Balloons tied to the fence. A banner that said "Congratulations, Mr. Wells." I started at 10 like always. Ms. Voss did not come by. Instead, there was an envelope on the desk with my name on it. Daniel Carter. I almost threw it away. Then I saw it was written in Ray's handwriting. I opened it. Inside was a single page torn from the old logbook. Ray's handwriting filled both sides. "Danny, if you're reading this, Voss gave it to you or the park did. I don't know which is worse. I should have told you more before your first night. I thought less knowledge might keep you safer. That was a mistake. Not the first. The mascots are not the thing. The park is not the thing either. The rules are for the shape it likes best. It doesn't need to kill you. It needs you to agree to be recognized. Names matter. Hands matter. Tickets matter. Wristbands matter. Uniforms matter. Jobs matter. Do not let it make you both guest and staff. That is how it keeps you. I stopped reading there. My mouth had gone dry. The last line was underlined. Do not let it make you both guest and staff. Guest wristbands. Cast wristbands. Security jacket. Meet and greet tickets. Escort assignment. The final line was written smaller. If you ever find a wristband with your name and no role printed on it, leave before midnight. Do not finish the shift. I turned the page over. There was one more sentence. If the gate is gone, don't look for it. I checked the laminated rules. There were still 10. No rule about a blank roll. No rule about leaving. I looked at the clock. 10:22. I called Ms. Voss. No answer. I called the office line from my cell. The phone on the desk rang. I let it. At 10:45, camera 12 showed lost and found. One wristband lay on the floor. White. I zoomed in. Daniel Carter. No role. No guest. No cast. Just my name. I stood up so fast the chair fell over. Ray's page said leave before midnight. Do not finish the shift. I grabbed my keys. The office lights flickered. The PA system chimed. Attention team members. Severe weather has been reported in the area. For guest safety, please remain in your assigned zones. I opened the office door. The hallway was normal. I walked fast through guest services and out toward the gate. The park lights were off except for the security lamps. Rain started before I reached the ticket booths. Big drops hitting hot pavement. The front gate was visible. Still there. Locked. Beyond it, Route 19 was visible too. Dark trees. Guardrail. Reflective sign. I almost laughed with relief. I unlocked the gate. The key turned. The chain loosened. Behind me, the carousel music started. Not the procedure music. The slow parade march. I pulled the gate open. A voice from the ticket booth said, Daniel Carter. I did not answer. I stepped through the gate. For 1 second, I was outside. Rain on my face. Parking lot under my shoes. My car 20 yards away. Then the park speakers behind me said, Guest exit is not authorized for staff currently on duty. The gate slammed shut. Not behind me. In front of me. I was standing inside the park again. The parking lot was on the other side. I looked down. The threshold line of the gate was beneath my feet. One shoe inside. One shoe outside. I did not move. That sounds impossible, but it is what happened. The gate was shut through me without touching me. The bars passed where my chest should have been, but there was no pain, no pressure. Just the knowledge that if I stepped the wrong way, I might agree with one side. The rain stopped. Only inside the park. Outside the gate, rain continued falling on my car. Inside, the pavement stayed dry. My left foot was wet. My right foot was dry. The rule came back. If the gate is gone, don't look for it. But the gate was not gone. I was. I stood there, half in and half out, listening to the parade music approach from behind. The Mascot gate was far down the midway, but I could hear soft feet. Many of them. A wristband lay on the ground just inside the gate. White. My name only. The office radio crackled from my belt, though I had left it on the desk. Ray's voice said, Don't choose both. I whispered, How? The radio hissed. My own voice answered, Say your name. I almost did. It felt like the answer. That is how it gets you. It makes the wrong thing feel like completing a form. Confirm identity. Accept terms. Sign here. Say your name and step through. The parade music came closer. I could see them in the reflection of the ticket booth glass. Mary Mac in front. Dolly Deer. Benny Beaver. Jasper Jack. The Pinecone Pals. Ray's mascot head. Marty's. Aaron's, even though he had quit alive. And mine. A soft cartoon security guard head with tired eyes. They came down the midway in 2 rows. Not marching. Walking. Like employees reporting to the front. The radio said in Ray's voice. Don't say it. The voice in my head said my name. I lifted my wet left foot. The park went silent. Every mascot stopped. I stepped backward. Into the park. The gate was suddenly in front of me again, solid and closed. I was fully inside. Dry pavement under both shoes. Outside, my car sat in the rain. The white wristband curled at my feet. I had chosen staff. Maybe that was wrong. Maybe outside would have been freedom. Maybe outside would have been the other park. I still don't know. The parade music resumed, but softer now. Almost disappointed. Mary Mac stood about 10 yards away. He raised one hand. I did not look long enough to decide which. I turned and walked back to the office. Not ran. Walking felt important. Behind me, soft feet followed at the same pace. All the way down the midway. Past the carousel. Past the game booths. Through guest services. Down the hall. To the office door. I went inside and locked it. The soft feet stopped outside. I turned off the lights. The clock read 11:59. At midnight the office phone rang. I let it ring. The radio said my full name. I did not answer. The ticket printer clicked. I did not look. Children laughed outside. I did not move toward the carousel switch because the rules said leave before midnight, and I had failed. I did not know which rules still applied. The clock stopped at 2:17. I locked the door again even though it was locked, turned off lights that were already off, and stood still until the park music stopped. At 5 o'clock, I went to Lost and Found. The white wristband with only my name was already in the bin. I did not put it there. Beside it was the laminated rules sheet. There were 11 rules now. 11. If you find a wristband with your name and no roll, do not attempt to leave through the front gate. Return to your post and wait for relief. I read that rule until the words stopped looking like words. At 6, no one came. No Ms. Voss. No maintenance. No relief. The sun rose. The park did not change. That was the first sign. Usually daylight made Briar Glen ordinary again. Cheap. Rotten. Embarrassing. That morning, the decorative lights stayed on. The midway bulbs glowed in the sunrise. The carousel uncovered itself sometime between 5 and 6. The Mascot gate stood open. At 6:17, the office phone rang. I answered before I thought. Not because I forgot the rules. Because the shift was over. That was my final mistake. No one spoke at first. Then Ms. Voss said, "Mr. Carter?" I closed my eyes. She had not used my full name. "Yes." "Are you still on property?" "Yes." A pause. "Who relieved you?" "No one." Another pause. This one was longer. "Mr. Carter," she said carefully, "Briar Glen did not schedule a night shift yesterday." I looked at the logbook. My entries filled the page. 10 p.m. clear. 11 p.m. wristband. 12 a.m. gate incident. 2:17 a.m. clock stopped. 5 a.m. rule updated. I said, "That's not funny. I am not joking. I have the envelope you left." I left no envelope. Outside the office window, music began to play. Soft. Cheerful. Daytime park music. Ms. Voss said, "Listen to me. Do not open the park." I looked at camera 1. Cars were pulling into the parking lot. Families. Guests. A line forming at the front gate. A little boy pressed his face between the bars and waved at the camera. He wore a yellow wristband. The gate was still locked. My keys were on the desk. The phone crackled. Ms. Voss said, "Mr. Carter, do not let them in." On the monitor, the little boy looked directly into the camera. His mouth moved. The office speakers carried his voice. "Daniel Carter," he said, "we're here for the meet and greet." The phone went dead. I stood up. The park music played. The families waited at the gate in the morning sun. Behind me, the Mascot room camera flickered on by itself. The shelves were full again. All the heads were facing the wall. I don't know who put them back. I don't know if I'm staff or guest now. I only know the park opens in 10 minutes, and there is a new wristband on my desk. It does not have my name on it. It has yours.